hearing the residents after we look at the budget hearing so that we can give you an opportunity to give us some input. All right?
Hello. All right, everybody can hear me. Welcome, good morning, council, staff, citizens. This is our budget retreat for the upcoming fiscal year. Your budget, we have a lot to present to you, and we want to get your feedback as well as citizen feedback, apparently, also. Staff has done an excellent job of putting this together. It meets the objectives that we set out to meet for this coming fiscal year. So I'm going to jump right into it. Hopefully everybody can see. Apparently you have to turn this on. So when you got nothing else, go ahead and start out with a joke. I'll credit this one to John back there. The geniuses and experts in engineering have figured out how much a rainbow weighs. Apparently they're pretty light. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to the retreat. Just an overview of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the timeline, as well as some legislative updates, and we're going to have a discussion on the proposed tax rate for this year, coming year. We are going to go through the budget highlights, the development process, as well as the highlights. We're going to have a discussion about the cut line and what did not make it into the budget. There's also some other items, such as adding a city holiday. In there, before we get to the last section, which is to go over our capital improvement program as well as our projects, we'll have an action item where James will present the no new revenue rate as well as the voter approved tax rate, and then you guys will set the maximum tax rate that can be set as our tax rate for next year. So a little bit about the budget timeline. This takes us from today from August 4th really to the beginning of the fiscal year, but the budget process actually begins a lot earlier. Earlier, but meaning in the spring, even late last year, James and his staff, as well as the rest of the staff, will start compiling their needs for the new fiscal year, doing projections and estimates for the current year, to see how we'll finish, and we can develop and see what resources we have left over to carry over, as well as what our position will be moving into the next fiscal year. So it really begins, I would say, in January, February time frame for some people, and really kicks in March, April, and we have budget meetings and review throughout the summertime, and then we arrive to where we are today. So August 4th, we get the state-defined tax rates, the ones I just mentioned. That's the no new revenue rate, as well as the voter approved rate. And James will go over those here in a little bit. And then we also take a vote to set that preliminary tax rate. Then on August 15th will be the first public hearing on the budget and the tax rate. We'll also vote at that time on the budget, on budget adoption. It'll be the first vote. And then it will also be the first vote on the tax rate. And there will be slight adjustments to the fee schedule that'll be brought forward at that time. On September 5th, we'll follow up with our second public hearing on the budget and tax rate, second vote on adopting the budget and ratifying the budget adoption, and we'll ratify the tax rate at that point in time, and then have the second vote on the tax rate and adopt it. And then on October 4th, of course, October 1st, the new fiscal year begins. So now, Council, I know you're aware that this year we created a legislative affairs component to the Public Affairs Department, and that's Linda Klepper. This was the first foray at it. It was kind of a little bit of a late start compared to the starting of the session this year. And it's really an opportunity to get a running start for the next session in 2 years from now. But Linda's going to come up and give you kind of an update, wrap up on the legislation that's critical or really important to us.
Okay, down. All right. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, my voice is I've got a little bit of allergies going on, but we will make it through some updates here on the legislative affairs. I need to go back a slide. Oops. Okay. So looking at some of the key bills, there was two key bills, or a few key bills that we were tracking this year. Departments were obviously tracking more than that, seeing how they make it through the process. But ultimately, some of my focus this year was on House Bill 1613, which was the Disabled Veterans Homestead Bill. A little bit of background, which James will get into more here in a minute, but the DVHS exemption is a program that the state created some years back, and unfortunately there's not a great funding mechanism for cities to recover some of the revenue that is lost from the exemption. The current program that's in place, we do participate in, and we're one of the cities that can because we touch a military installation. But under the current program, if you don't physically touch the base, then you don't qualify for those funds. And so we do recover some of that revenue loss, but it's not the amount that we lose every year. So this bill was drafted, and it's been going to session, I think, in some form over the past couple of sessions, but this one, it got really far, and it almost made it to the finish line, but ultimately didn't pass. What this bill would have allowed is state funding to all cities that are impacted above a certain percentage of revenue loss. And so this would have been great for all the cities that see some sort of impact. We did get support by our representatives, so just of note, we were able to reach out to our representatives. We also submitted testimony during the public hearings, and we did get support from our representatives. It just ultimately didn't end up the way that we had hoped. We do suspect this will come back next session, and maybe things will be different. The next bill, and this is a big one that did pass, is House Bill 2127. It's a preemption bill. This one did pass, but right now it's unclear sort of what the impact is going to be. There's a lawsuit that was filed by the city of Houston, and San Antonio also joined the lawsuit that this violates Texas Constitution. So we're going to see what the courts do, and then after that, go from there. What we do know, though, is the preemption bill states that unless expressly authorized by another statute, a city may not adopt, enforce, or maintain an ordinance, order, or rule regulating conduct in a field of regulation that is occupied by several different codes. So essentially, this would limit some of that on our end. There are some exceptions in the bill, but again, this is something that we still need to explore once it comes out of the lawsuit. There was House Bill 3, the school safety measures. I think that's going to be, Daniel's going to be covering that in just a minute. But essentially that passed and requires that every school campus has a security guard, an armed security guard present. There were several other bills that passed. Some have bigger impacts to our city than others. A couple that we're still looking at and evaluating is the annexation bill. There's one on engineering fees. TikTok was banned at the state level earlier this year by the governor, and there was a bill that passed in legislation that trickled that down to municipal governments as well. So we are still trying to get advice from legal on whether or not that also encompasses library computers. So even if people are using a public library, are they able to access TikTok or not? Are they able to do it on our Wi-Fi or not? Again, the bill says no devices that are operated by government entities, so we have to chase that out and look into that a little further. And then also the broadband. There was some money put towards broadband across the state this year. So there was a couple of summer sessions that happened this past summer. And And they focused really on the school issues, school property tax issues. And what came out of that was a school property tax relief plan that if it goes to the voters in November and it passes, then residents will see some property tax relief on their school property taxes. I think James will touch on that in a little bit as well. But that was ultimately what came out of that, as the legislature had a big surplus and they were trying to put those funds to use and lower the tax rate or tax burden. Future special sessions, there should be another one coming up this fall. And it's speculated that they'll be covering the school voucher program and teacher pay raises. And then next session, something that TML is keeping on their radar is land use. A bill came up this session. It ultimately didn't pass, but it kind of surprised TML a little bit. And so they're going to be putting together a committee to evaluate that. And then hopefully by 2025, the next session, they've got more information to share with cities on what maybe that agenda may look like. I'm going to turn it over to Daniel.
Like Linda said, June 14th, House Bill 3 passed, and it mandates that all school campuses have to have at least one armed security officer. Currently, school has asked us, the police department, to fill 5 positions. We can't fill that just yet because we're unable to fill it currently. But we have 10 schools we serve. We have 6 officers we currently provide services with. The interim solution to this problem right now is to fill it with off-duty officers. That cost is carried on by the school district. Our projected timeline to staff this with full-time police officers will be the 24-25 school year, and a lot of that's going to be dependent on our ability to recruit officers this next year. We think come January, February, we'll have a better idea if we're going to be able to do this. If not, we'll probably have to continue with the off-duty officers doing it.
And council, I'll just say that this is interactive, so if you have questions along the way, feel free to ask. You don't have to wait until the end or anything.
All right, good morning. My name is James Walters. I'm the finance director here for the city of Schertz. Let's go over the tax rates. All right, so we're all here for what we're waiting for. So the big news, 2023 property values. So last year, the year we're in current right now, taxable value in the city of Schertz was just shy of $4.9 billion. Those same properties are now worth $5.3 billion, so value's gone up. And then we added $113 million of new development, new homes, new businesses, something that wasn't on the tax roll before. So for a grand total for 2023, we have $5.4 billion of taxable value. Overall increase of $551 million. Getting pretty big. Now to touch on the DVHS, Disabled Veteran Homestead Update, it is a program that fully exempts certain disabled veterans from paying any property taxes. So they pay 0. Here in the city of Schertz, fully support the effect of the program. We do wish there were some other mechanisms out there for communities that have heavy presence of this exemption. That kind of passes some of the taxes on to the non-disabled veterans. And the state set up an aid program, but as we mentioned before, they don't actually fund it very well. So from their original calculation, Schertz is eligible. We got less than half of what we were able to get based on their current funding. The legislation that failed would have given us almost 100% of that money back, but sadly it did not go through. And then I have verified in the upcoming budget, the allocation that they have for the existing program didn't change. What that means is our reimbursement will be at the same level or less, probably. So going back, these are the impacts of this particular exemption in Schertz for the last 4 years. For 2023, the total amount of exempt property is $834 million. About an increase of 20% of $140 million. Last year, 2022, about the same amount of increase, 143, so the same number, same value of exemptions went up, but that was 26%. So kind of leveling off maybe for now. We'll see how that works out coming up. To give you an impact of what this does to our tax rate and what it translates to in tax dollars and services. Can anybody tell me what our current tax rate is? 4950, 0.4950 is our current tax rate. So for 2022, if we didn't have this exemption insurance, or let's say it's a different way, if the state fully funded the impact of this exemption, we could have had the same amount of tax revenue and dropped our 4950 tax rate to 4234. Almost, that's a 7-cent decrease in our tax rate. So that's kind of the impact this has on us right now. So we were really hoping that would pass. So that way, all the veterans that provided that service and sacrifice for us can still get this great benefit. And then the city of Schertz and other communities around the state could continue to provide great services and be properly funded. To put this in another way, 19% of homesteads in Schertz have this DVHS exemption. So about 1 in 5 people that own a home, live in that home, and have that homestead is a disabled veteran with this homestead exemption. And another fact, there are other types of disabled veteran homestead exemptions. They give just a percentage or something off, but they still pay some taxes. 51% of homesteads have some sort of disabled veteran homestead exemption. So 1 every 2 homes, basically, have some sort of exemption here in Schertz. Perspective. Now, it doesn't account for rental properties, doesn't account for apartment buildings or items like that. This is just a homestead where you have that homestead exemption. This is your home. Any questions over disabled veteran homestead exemptions?
Just one question. So we're looking at about a $3 to $4 million deficit based on this exemption. Am I correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so the state has us calculate a couple of different tax rates. First is the no new revenue tax rate. So that's the tax rate which would give the city the exact same amount of revenue from taxes as the year prior, not including new development, but on the same properties. The voter approval rate, which is the highest rate council can adopt without going to the voters. So if we went with this rate, city council could pass it. If we all decided we wanted to go higher, we can do that. We just put it on the election in November. And then I'll show you the current tax rate and the proposed maximum tax rate, which if council sets that today, that will go out on all the notices. Council can adopt a rate less than that, but we won't be able to adopt a rate higher than that without doing new notices, holding new public hearings. And the tax rates come in at, so yes, we have 0.4950 as our current rate. The no new revenue drops to 0.4554. The voter approval rate is 0.4872. We have no unused increment this year. We can increase that further by. I'll touch on that in a second. And the proposed rate from staff is the 0.4872. Now, if you recall, last year we had some unused increment that we took advantage of. When the original Senate Bill 2, from the last session, came through, they said that we can only go up 3.5% on our general fund tax rate every year over the no new revenue. And if we don't take advantage of that, we can actually bank and save the unused portion for a later day. Last year, we used all 3 years of our saved up tax rate, and that's how we hired all 30 positions that we went through last year and made that budget work. But we used up all of our increment, so we don't get any more. There's nothing else in the bank for us to utilize this time. So the 4872 is the maximum we can go up to without going to the voters. Other information, 1 penny is equal to $544,000 of revenue, or is $32.46 on the annual home annually. Questions on the tax rates?
No questions? It's going down, yes. We're not even trying and it's going down.
Yep. So what we've actually proposed,
Yeah, I think I'll just say that we are proposing the voter-approved tax rate. In the past, there were a lot more options and choices because of the increment. This is a little bit easier decision, in my opinion, to make because it is, the voter-approved tax rate is moving us down a little bit of savings to the residents and business owners, and as well as it gets us to where we need to be to meet all of our needs and our priorities for next year.
Okay, oh, Lord. Just to clarify, thank you. So the rate is going down, but bills will go up.
Actually,
So-
bills will more likely than not go down for everyone because the homestead
Based on the new
exemption-
legislation?
Yeah, the homestead exemption for the school tax is going from $40,000 to $100,000, which translates to about an $800 savings for the average homeowner. So likely the total tax bill will go down.
Okay, so, but I like full transparency, and can I have this turned down? So for the city, thought I did a good mic check, but apparently not. But for the city, if you just compared city bill last year to city bill this year, full transparency, our bill will go up, but the residents' bill in total because of everything else, and as always, the school bill is the highest portion of your tax, your property taxes, but I want to be accurate in terminology. The rate will go down over last year, but everybody's value has gone way up. So their bill, our line item, will be an increase over last year, but thankfully, because of other factors, their total bill should go down.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say, yes, it's mostly correct. There are some properties where the values did go down, maybe in the commercial sector, but in residential, yeah, more likely than not, everybody's has either gone up in the past few years, causing that, cap to push them up each year. There are some businesses that protested and went down because of the changes in the economy. It is a function of, yes, if your appraisal went up, then yes, you're probably going to pay more in city tax. But you're completely correct in saying that overall the tax bill will go down because of the legislation that passed.
And I just want to make a comment. Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that this is for owner-occupied homestead homes. All right, all the commercial rentals, everything else, they don't get any of these breaks. So those are the ones that taxes are actually going to go up dramatically.
Sure.
Businesses.
And I believe in Bear County, they get two different tax bills, Bear County and Guadalupe County. So, because Guadalupe collects ours. So
Bear
they won't
Bear
see a
County, I
difference.
believe, has a community college district as
Yeah.
well as a hospital district, and Sarah
Water. Mhm.
has a tax. So they have some extra taxes that the Guadalupe County people don't.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned we used everything we had in the bank. When do we fill it out? The three
Oh.
increases.
yeah, so let's say right here, this is a good example. The voter approval rate is 0.4872, the no new revenue rate is 0.554. So if the city decided to go up to 0.4672, which is in the middle, that's 2 cents lower than the voter approval rate, those 2 cents would go into the bank,
For next year.
and then next year we could pull it back out and go above the voter approval rate using those 2 bank cents.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Good questions. Good questions.
So on the actual breakdown of the tax rate, the city's tax rate has two different sections. The M&O, maintenance and operations, that goes to the general fund, which is the primary government fund. And I hit a button. I don't know what I did. Oh, this is. Get back going.
Y'all have to hear the whole presentation again.
Starting from the beginning. So we have the maintenance and operation tax rate, M&O. That goes for the general fund, fire, police service, your friendly neighborhood finance team. And then we have the INS, or interest and sinking, and all the funds raised from that go to pay the city's debt.
One more. Two more.
Okay. So the M&O will drop from 0.3470 to 0.3324. The INS will go from 0.4180 to 0.1548. Overall, the tax rate will go from 0.4950 to 0.4872. Any questions over there?
So the increase in the INS is going to be for the new bonds for the fire station?
We have the bonds for the fire station. We have some extra capacity in our CIP to do some more for Main Street. So we'll start seeing that come up, ended up being a little bit higher. Looking at some of the philosophy, we'll get to it a little bit further. But with this, we have that available. And then originally in our previous debt plan and CIP plan, we had programmed in some INS rate decreases throughout the years. If our goal now is to more maintain a level tax rate along with that and move those over to additional debt projects so we can do more for our streets and road programs and put some money towards parks and facilities, that'll be where this comes in. But I'll go over that a little bit.
Mayor and council, when I go through the priorities here in a couple of slides, if you'll remember, in the middle of that priority list is developing a comprehensive capital improvement program. Once we get into that, we're trying to develop a strategy to maintain more of a consistent INS rate so we can move forward with that consolidated CIP. The list of projects that's on that is longer than the amount of available funding, as is always the case. But we're trying to maintain a position to where we don't go down too much or go down too much. We're going to try and keep it at that level, 14, 15 cents as we move forward. Bless you.
So, as you mentioned, the taxed bills for the city tax rates. So the no new revenue rate, we'll use that as the base. That should bring in the same amount of money for the city as the year prior. Based on the average taxable home value in the city of Schertz, the Schertz portion of your tax bill next year would be about $1,478 at the no new revenue. At the vote approval at the proposed rate that we're going at, that would actually increase annually to $1,582, which is about a $103 increase. There's some rounding we did on that. Or a 7% increase on the tax bill. The $103 is about $8.65 on the monthly escrow. So that's what we're talking about here as far as the city's portion is concerned. Now at the bottom, we did estimate what the effect of the legislature on the homestead exemption for the school districts would be. So on the average taxable value in the city of Schertz, your overall bill would drop by $850 from the school portion. Now, if this county does about what the city does, they go up maybe $100 as well. You're looking about a $650 decrease in Schertz citizens' tax bills this next year. We don't know what the county's going to do. I want to estimate what the county's going to do, but that could be the overall effect that we see this next year. The average taxable home value in the city of Schertz is now $324,000. And as I mentioned, what's here is the annual bill amounts. And if we were somehow able to keep the same tax rate at 4,950, you can see that tax bill would go up about $128. But we can't even reach that. It's not even an option. Kind of give you a history of the tax rates. This is the M&O, the maintenance and operations, the money that goes to the general fund, and what that does over time, as well as the proposal. We were actually here about 33 cents. We had dropped during the recession. We had come back. We had hugged this 35-cent line for 5 years, and then dropping back down to the 33.25. So this is a lower M&O tax rate than we had in 2006. That's the first time in about 6 years. On the INS side, back in that same 2006, we did a couple of big bond elections, if you recall. That was 2005 and then 2010. It resulted in a tax rate increase. Based on our bond program and our bond scheduling program, we were able to bring that down. We've got all the way down to 0.148. But the proposed tax rate is just in the middle of the past 2 years as far as the INS goes. And then when you stack them on top of one another, this is kind of what you see for the total tax rate for the city of Schertz, where we're in 2006. Most of the growth in the tax rate was related to the bond elections. We went up in the M&O 2017-18. We kind of hovered around there, and we dropped a little bit. We're proposing to drop a little bit this coming year in 2023. That'll do it for the tax rates. Does anyone have any questions about how that works, the calculations? All right, now for the fun part, which Steve is going to take from me because it's the fun part, is what kind of services and what kind of opportunities does this get us next year?
Thanks, James. Definitely the fun part. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the goals for moving forward. And these are the ones that we talked about in March at the pre-budget workshop. And you can see them there. Number 1, staff compensation. Number 2, infrastructure. 3, the consolidated CIP, like I mentioned a few minutes ago. 4, increased staffing levels. And 5, new/remodeled facilities. As is the case with all budgets, you never really can get to everything the way you would like to. So that's why you develop a priority order. I know you've heard me say this over and over until I was blue in the face about us needing to address compensation. It is an issue that I observed through our internal staff survey, as well as the exit interviews that we have, as well as our ability to compete in the marketplace. We're trying to bring ourselves into a position to where we compete, not necessarily be at the top of the pack, but put us in a competitive position. Just to refresh quickly about, back to that, just a refresh or a quick overview of where we are with the staff compensation. We started discussing it at the pre-budget retreat. Last month we brought to you guys, well, I guess technically in June, we brought to y'all the first step in moving forward in that process, which is to hire a consultant to do our class and comp study. And then we're moving forward with that, and we'll actually begin, we've actually somewhat begun that process, and we're gonna really get it going later this month. Hope to be done by December and implement early next year. I'll talk more about that in a second, but quick refresh there. So our expanded programs, just some of our highlights. We have included wage adjustments, and that's the primary focus is on the wage adjustments to the base salaries. We've added some new personnel. We've put in money for the street preservation and maintenance program, and we also included some funding for police equipment that Daniel will talk about here in a little bit. No, I'll talk about it. Some police equipment that's being necessitated by the purchase of the current vendor, and it's kind of pushing us in that direction, as well as some additional programs and equipment. So wage adjustments, I kind of dove off into it a little bit quick, but the first thing we intend to do in the implementation portion of what I was talking about is an ECI adjustment. So this is an Employment Conditions Index that's produced by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Right now it's at 4.7%, and it was at 4.7% at the last quarter. That's the number that I showed you guys before. At the end of this most recent quarter in June, it was also at 4.7%, so that's the number that we're moving forward with. For all funds, it's about $1.4 million. We'll put that in place in the beginning of the next fiscal year at the first available payroll, which will begin October 7th. It'll hit paychecks 2 weeks later, so it's something that we're doing right away at the beginning of the year. That's in an effort to keep us, we're doing an ECI as well as the class and comp results. That's in an effort to keep us at pace with the market. We don't want to do the class and comp and then turn around and automatically, right off the bat be 4.7%, what everybody else does. And that was also a concern that was discussed at the council meeting when we brought forward the contract for the company to do the class and comp, was making sure that we go ahead and do something now to move ourselves forward and then implement the rest later when we have the more complete data for the class and comp study. So speaking of the class and comp, it'll be effective December 30th, and all funds, we've budgeted $2.6 million. Next fiscal year, the impact will be 1.9 because we'll essentially be implementing 3 quarters of the year rather than a full fiscal year. But the full fiscal impact is that 2.6 number. That's what we've budgeted. Like I've mentioned before, it may be a little higher, maybe a little lower, depending on the results of the study. But that's the best guess number that we have right now to plug into the budget so we can move forward with a budgeted number. But just, again, the primary focus is on salaries and base compensation. We're also going to look at benefits and supplemental pays, as well as career progression opportunities as funding permits, but the focus is on the base compensation. We also have included the cost to cover insurance premium increases, which are $344,000 for all funds. And we initially had a projected 30% increase in our insurance premiums. We were able to go back into the market, get proposals, and that is now 7%. Is that right? 7% increase. And we're going to evaluate it again next year. There is actually another insurance company that's entered into the market here that's kind of a larger statewide national player. They just not have completely established themselves in the market, so we're going to see how they do, and we'll get proposals again next year, see if we can drive that cost down some.
Before you move on to that
Yes,
one, Nick, I have a couple questions on that.
Yes, sir.
If $1.4 million is a 4.7% increase, I'm looking at 2.6. We're looking at about a 13.5% increase of wages. Is that across the board, or are we going to stagger based on what the comp study indicates?
Great question. So the 4.7 is across the board. That's an inflationary number. The 2.6 million could be 1% for one person, could be 15% for another, could be 7%. It's going to depend on the position and where that position is relative to the marketplace. So some may see a significant increase and some may not see an increase at all. We don't intend to move anybody backwards, but assuming they're above market, which I seriously doubt for any of our pay scales. But
okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good question. So personnel that we're adding 3 firefighters. That's about $315,000 impact next year. That's to carry on with our progressive staffing of fire station number 4. So we're adding 3 this year. We added 3 in the current year. We're adding 3 next year, and then we'll add the remaining 5, 6 the next year. Next year, and then 3 more. Yes. So we're phasing them in. It's, as you all know, it's not easy to hire firefighters or police officers. It's a pretty lengthy process. Also, you want to bring them in and get them trained and going. And blend them in with the shifts, and then you open your news station. We also added an administrative assistant in engineering, and quite frankly, engineering is one of our tougher staffing departments right now. We've vacancy and attracting people, so we have higher paid personnel doing administrative work, so there's considerable amount of value in bringing in a full-time admin assistant to take that off of Kathy so she can get back to the business of doing engineering. Additional spam funding, this was a priority number 2. Y'all have heard me talk about this quite a bit as well. So in the base budget for 23-24, we have $650,000, and we're adding to that, and we're calling it one time because remember, we have a 26% fund balance requirement for the general fund, but we're sitting at about 35%. The plan would be, to invest that excess fund balance into our roads. So we'll take that money, and we're calling it one time because it could potentially run out unless we continue to have years where we have excess revenues or underruns on expenditures. So in total, we have about 1.65 million slotted for street maintenance, the SPAM program. That's all the way from crack seal to slurry seal, overlays, mill and overlay to reconstruct. You'll see more.
Could you go back one slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it was indicated earlier that the school district is requesting 5 additional police officers. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why aren't we getting because these positions are basically city positions, they're just allocated somewhere else. If we don't put these positions in there at this time, we can't do it until the next budget year. And the school starts before the budget year. So wouldn't it be wise to go ahead and allocate the positions, have the council put these positions, but not fill them until the next school year comes around? I just, looking at, we have to play with the way the system is designed. And that's when I'm looking at this, is that if we don't get these positions, we'll continue to use outside help to fill them in, to fill in the voids.
Well, it's challenging to fill those 5 positions because we're already 10 positions open at the police department itself. So it's hard for us to fill those and then at the same time fill the school district's requirements.
Yeah, I think the reason why the chief and his staff have developed the plan the way they have is because they have so many current vacancies of their own that they intend to fill first. And so we can get our staffing level for baseline city services up to where it needs to be. They're gonna help the district, but they're gonna do it with overtime.
Correct, sir.
Fill in officers. And then the following fiscal year, 24-25, is when we would attempt to hire permanent.
Yes, sir, that's a
Is that
plan.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We could add the positions, but the likelihood of filling 15 positions, 16 positions is just not good.
No, and I agree.
Yeah.
We won't fill them in, but not adding them won't give us the opportunity to add them until next year on the budget.
Wait, all the school positions, all these school resource officers, they're funded by SCUCISD, correct?
Yes, sir, they are.
So the 5 additional ones, that's a budget discussion that SCUCISD has to have, not us. We can put 5 positions on our manpower book. Doesn't matter because we're not paying that bill anyway. We could put 10 more police positions on the books. But it's not an issue for us because the specific ones you're talking about are funded by SCUCISD, not us.
I understand that portion, but they are city employees. That's what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter where the money's coming from. It's that there are city positions that we cannot fill until 2024.
Yes, I don't think the chief is confident that we'd be able to get 15 bodies in there. Even if we put them on the books and put them there, we would not be able
Yeah.
to fill them.
No, I don't
Yeah.
think we'll fill them in either. I just don't, I think we just need to put the spaces in there.
Yeah, I think we fully intend to come back the next fiscal year and ask for those positions. And just to clarify, the new legislation does not allow for 100% reimbursement, so we would be picking up 20% of that cost. roughly 20% of that cost.
Is that 20% of the overtime cost?
Actually, with the overtime, they'll pay all of it because it's directly related. So the reason why I say 80% is because the times they're not in school, like summer and Christmas break, I guess, things like that, the state won't reimburse for that. That the money is essentially coming from the state. But when we do it overtime, they'll only work during the school times, so we will get reimbursed for that. I mean, if I could circle back with the chief and see if it's critical that we add positions now. It's just not what they've proposed right at this moment.
I don't think we add them if we already have 10 open. We know we have 10. If you put 15 in there, it just doesn't, it's look like we got to fill a whole lot of positions where if we can't even fill the 10, what's the point of adding the 5 now when we know we can't get them? I don't think it makes sense to do that at the moment.
No, that's what I'm saying, is that we can't put them in the books until October 1st, 2024.
I could offer this, Mayor. If we do find ourselves in a circumstance where we're able to fill the positions and things change, everybody loves our class and comp study, and they all want to come here, we could do an amendment mid-year and put those in and hire those positions. So if it's okay with you, we could kind of reevaluate halfway through the year and see if that's a direction we want to go.
That is a way to go to accomplish this, and I don't think that I'm making myself clear as why they need to be on the books. Well, whether or not we fill them or not, that's all entirely based on the positions and the availability. But we can't fill them. If we have them, if there is police officers out there, we can't hire them because they're not in our budget. That's what I'm saying.
We got 10 to fill first, so we got to fill the 10 first.
I understand that, but if you have 20 that come in, you can't fill 20. You can't fill your 15.
We don't have that. I don't think so. I mean, as much as I would love to say we don't have that many police officers coming in, with the way everyone is stretched for police officers, getting them and they're down and short, it's going to be a stretch.
But it's not a matter of filling them. What I'm saying is the positions. The positions. You can't, if there is 20 and there's 20 that are coming in here, we can't hire them. We could only hire the 10 that we have positions for.
Why can't we do a mid-year budget amendment?
That's what I'm saying. Now, that is a solution that he just offered. And we can do an amendment at that point.
So we're,
Mayor, another potential solution would be to allow for overhires. I believe we do overhires here, right? We could allocate overhires, meaning if in fact we're able to fill it, we fill it, and then we would come to you with a budget amendment at that point in time and what I mean by overhires, if you're not familiar with that concept, is if the police department is allotted 100 officers, we would say you can fill 105 because we know based on the vacancy rate that you typically have, even if you hire 105, you're not going to be there long enough to use all your salary dollars. We could just increase that by, is it 5 or 6?
I'm not sure.
Our additional.
I'm not
How
sure,
many do
sir.
the schools need? 5?
I'm sorry.
How many more officers do the schools need? 5?
They're asking for 5, yes, sir.
5. So we could add 5 more overhires, and if we get to the point where we can fill those, or if we're able to do that, we could come back and get an amendment if we need it. If not, we would just fill them as overhires. Is that a workable solution? Does that sound
Yes,
reasonable?
It's something that we can work with, definitely. I just overtasking our police officers with the overtime and everything else is my biggest concern. Yes, we are picking up 5 additional schools, and at one point, what point is that? We don't want to get to that point where we are overtasking our police officers, and that's the point I'm trying to make with the extra positions, to go ahead and just put them on the books.
As Steve,
Yes.
we can, in the past, we have added positions, but left them unfunded as far as the budget. So another solution would be to increase the overall position count but then add no funding for these officers. And so they're on the books. We just wouldn't have the money for them until such times we could fill them and then work out a new agreement with the school district. So that would be another option too.
That's essentially what I was proposing, just by a different name.
We got two options. We can do the unfunded positions or later on, budget amendment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay. Okay, once again, any questions on the spam funding? The 650 represents what we typically put in the base budget. The million is coming out of that excess fund balance. Police equipment. The police department, we've included $550,000 in this budget. This is a 5-year program, so you'll see that 550 for 5 years in a row. Is to replace all their in-car cameras, their body-worn cameras, and their tasers. Motorola has purchased WatchGuard, which is a company that does the body cams, and they are requiring significant equipment upgrades. This happens a lot in technology. They buy it, and then they require a complete change out of equipment or things of that nature, and you end up spending as much or more than you would by completely changing. The police chief is proposing to switch to another company, which is like a bundled service for those 3 products, and they offer a no-interest a payout program where you can pay it over time and not necessarily absorb the cost. The advantage of not purchasing it all at once is you get equipment upgrades and change outs as you go along. And I will comment, I mean, it is expensive, but this is the baseline. This is essentially a huge chunk of the baseline equipment that our police officers use. Other additional programs in the general fund, in the library, we've increased the library materials budget from $50,000 up to $65,000. Art and IT, ArcGIS, the indoor maps, we've had an extension there. There's a small amount there. vSphere spheres are actually virtual servers that are kind of an offsite. This is $87,000 to add that for public safety. It allows us to have a virtual backup program. And then in the court, we are shifting away from court security funds back to the general fund for some costs for the bailiffs. Also, some other items, smaller, these are all smaller items, and you'll notice when we talk about this in a minute, that once we get past the large adjustments, there's a lot of small things that we're able to add in here. They're more equipment-based, one-time cost based on fleet. There's a hose crimper, as well as reels, overhead reel system to bring the fluids directly to the bay where the tech is working. In facilities, we're funding some tablets for folks out in the field to use, as well as a trailer that's a multi-use trailer that we can use with different departments. In the fire department, we'll be implementing Opticon, and that's if you're not familiar with it, the intersection light system. So as a fire truck approaches the intersection, the Opticon will change it to make it green. And there's also the Strong Arm multi-purpose tool. This is a multi-purpose tool that'll help them get through doors. It's a hydraulically based tool that can essentially break things open or get them out of their way, essentially. In the streets department, to support the street maintenance program, we are purchasing a pothole truck. It'll be a truck with hot mix in it, so we can go do potholes and daily maintenance. We'll also have a lay-down machine that we can go and do some small resurface type jobs. Yeah, in the EMS fund, for Medic 5, we're adding 2 EMT positions. This will make it an overnight bus, right? So we'll also have 2 full-time positions for peak hour, part-time positions, right? Not full-time? 2 full-time positions for peak hours. And then the drainage fund, just one item, a zero-turn mower. The water and sewer fund, there's a little bit of a restructure that they would like to do. We'll be creating a lead clerk position, and taking the existing assistant utility billing manager, making it a lead clerk as well, and kind of splitting the organization in half. And functionally, half will report to each of those lead clerks. We're enhancing the phone payment system to make so you can do automated payments by phone. And also in water and wastewater, we are buying a vac truck, which is a significant item, but this is something that's critical. As you'll notice from when we had the issue out here, it's something that's a critical piece of equipment for them. And also we're doing a fire hydrant and valve replacement program. The initial funding is $50,000. We're gonna see how far we can get with that and then carry on in the next few years. In the general fund, so I think this is where I hand it over to James. Are there any questions before I step down? Any other questions? I know it's it's a simplified list from what you've seen in the past, but it is because we have such big ticket items on the front end. And essentially we'll talk about this in a minute, but we'll get to those, but we're just gonna have to prioritize.
All right, now that the fun part's out of the way, let's get back to the raw numbers. What everyone loves. So the general fund budget as proposed is just shy of $50 million, $49,927. It's an increase about $4.8 million from the current year approved budget, or a 10.7% increase. The non-personnel budgets increased about 9.6% related to the $1 million we're putting in for the streets program one time, as well as the PD equipment replacement programs. And then the personnel budgets increased about 11.3%. So about 12% we were looking at before. We do have some turnover and some other savings from positions that have been vacated to kind of mitigate some of that increase. So that goes for the pay adjustments, the insurance, the ECI, and the 4 new positions that we saw in the general fund only. So graphically, so you don't have to look at raw numbers with 8 digits. This is what the general fund budget, final approved budgets have been over time. Last year with the increment we had here, and then continuing on that trend, just shy of 50 million. Okay. So sales taxes, the chart I wanted to show. Sales taxes, we use a 3-year rolling average growth to kind of smooth out some of the growth trends, as well as look at a budget to actual over time. So over 3 years, the black line, so this is our 3-year average growth rate. We've been pretty good, been in the double digits for quite a few years. Starting to slow down a little bit with the economies starting to slow down. We thought it was going to go down slower. Fed picked up on that there's still some inflationary factors, and they raised the rate just a couple weeks ago. I wasn't too sure that was the right call, looking at some more employment data and cost and CPI data that came out with that about the same time. It's showing, yeah, it started to slow down, but maybe not as much as they wanted. If the Fed gets their way and kind of slows down the economy a little bit more, we'd expect the sales taxes to kind of follow suit eventually and continue the little bit of slowdown period. So next year, the proposed increase is about 7% is what we're guessing. So our long-term average is slightly higher than that or around there. So we're not thinking we're going to be risky and go 10% increase in sales tax this next year, even though we have seen something like that recently. But we do look like this is what we had seen throughout this entire inflationary period. Our sales tax kept busting the budget. We'll probably do that a little bit again this year, not as much as you see the slowdown start to happen and kick in. So we still expect an increase. We're just seeing it a little bit slower. And this and permits are probably the most volatile of the city's revenue sources. So we try to pay a little more attention to this one. And if we are wrong, we want to be this way wrong, not the other direction. So in the franchise, this is what utility companies and telecom companies pay the city to use our right-of-way. Fairly steady, a little bit of growth. We've seen a couple growth as the city continues to grow in population over the last couple of years. So we're trying to match the budget to actual for next year. Permit revenue is the other volatile, volatile, unpredictable type of revenue. We don't know when these big permits are coming in. We can kind of track and plan for the residential side. We have seen a little bit of slowdown there recently, but the commercial are the big ones that some year you're going to get an Amazon, some year you're going to get a Cisco, some year the school district's going to build a bunch of high schools, it's, which is kind of what happened here. We kind of can know when it's coming, but we won't know when it actually happens until they get through it. So this is what we're looking at for now. Looking at just about hitting our budget for the end of this year is looking pretty good. And next year we are noticing a little bit of slowdown on the residential side, especially if the Fed continues up with the rate increases and slowing down the economy. It'll affect mortgage rates, which will affect some of the builders. So we feel pretty comfortable and safe with the projections we have for next year. On the fees, so this is our municipal court fines, our rental revenues, all the some of the little miscellaneous type services that we do, the pool, for instance. Look like we'll just about hit our target, a little bit decrease for next year. Part of the building permit's a plan check fee, which is located in the fees section, so it kind of goes along with the slowdown in the residential, and then slow down the municipal court fines and citations. Like it's evening out, just what large of the decreases happen is sort of a change in philosophy as well as the court of the overall court system, state and nationwide. But we've made adjustments for that and are keeping an eye on that. All right, kind of goes with all the fees, other big item. Look on the expense side, personnel. As you'd expect from Steve's presentation, the increase there is related to the ECI, the class and comp, the insurance. Again, not a lot of positions this next year. The operating, this is the non-capital, non-project, non-personnel, looking at relatively flat. So we're not changing a whole lot here. And the other areas, the capital outlay, this is our vehicle replacements. This is the roadway infrastructure, the one-time $1 million. This is related to some of the equipment changes over in PD. As well as a lay-down machine, pothole trailer. All those kind of items fit here, so the one-time deals. And then we will have a couple of changes to the fee schedule, looking to be minimum. It'll look like a lot of changes on the fire inspection fees and fire permit fees. They put forth some changes. They're going to do a little bit more review of sprinkler systems and having that broken down for smoke detection and fire prevention, as well as some inspections and licenses for certain kind of care. We're going to detail all that out. We don't expect too much change from that, but it'll be primarily business focused on who they'll be serving. The water and sewer fee, we do expect to bring us one of those proposed increase for those two fees. Well, CCMA and SSLGC, or a primary water provider, primary sewer treatment provider, have indicated they're increasing their fees and probably already got those approved. So we'll be evaluating ours as well. We'll have a sit down on Monday to kind of wrap up our 5-year projection for our fees with Wildan. It's the same company that does the fees projections for CCMA and SSLGC. So we'll have all the same data. We're all kind of looking at the same information. And we'll bring that proposal with y'all with the budget this year. One of the other statements that we'll have to make, thanks to legislative, is this budget includes a fee increase of blah, 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 and will generate this amount more revenue. So we'll have some more language we'll put in there to go along with our fee changes. So as I mentioned, we'll be on the 15th, and we'll show you the full breakdown of those. We don't expect it to be very high, though. So the proposed budget meets the 26% fund balance requirement. We'll probably hit that next year, so about the 33%, 34%. With this budget, the capital, with the withdrawal that we're doing, that I didn't expressly show it, but it's about a $2.5 million decrease in our fund balance to fund this budget. We'll show that out coming up with the actual budget document, which is submitted to council for the 15th. And the excess fund balance for street maintenance and repair over the next 5 years will help get us there. But we are looking at about $2.5 million decrease in our fund balance. All right, for that 5-year INS summary, it's the interest in sinking with the 1548 tax rate. We'll be able to do these upcoming debt issuances. For next year, we look at $37.25 million, 25, 26, 20 million, 26, 27, 15 million, and another 25 and 28, 29, sort of the 5-year gets through the 2020s as far as their debt issuances. Mentioned before, that first 37, the last time we looked at it, as well as the 25 at the end, were a lot different. With the addition of Main Street as a priority and some of the changes that went along with that project, as well as other CIP programs that we were looking at, will cause us to issue a little bit more debt, maybe hold off on decreasing the INS rate, and we had that swap we had talked about a couple of meetings ago. But we have just a lot of capital projects that we need to get through, and when we get to these sort of dollar amounts, it's really not feasible to do that with cash in the general fund when every year we can only put like $1 million towards something and we need $19 million for a project. But what does that look like as far as our debt service payments? So the blue line, the bottom line is our current obligations. 2024 would be the next one we'd issue. We'd issue it next year. The payments would start in 2025, so we wouldn't see it for another year. And if we start the public safety complex buildings is what we had originally shown. Nothing's locked in yet. Do that in 2 issuances and then have another infrastructure bonds in 2029. So it's not a fairly even, while it's a little blocky in steps, it's a fairly even kind of increase that goes along, and we anticipate our tax rate, the 1549, will be able to meet all the requirements of this plan without any other further increases. Other projects we want to go out to the voters for, we can do that, and that could be an additional increase if we need it. But we believe this is an amount that we can deal with this current tax rate. Any questions over the dollar amounts? And I try to do more charts. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
So in the absence of any questions, you guys want to take about a 5-minute break and get refreshed coffee and everything else?
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
If we can have our seats so we can go ahead and resume our budget retreat.
Hey, is everybody ready to start? Hi, James. All right. So this portion, again, I know many of y'all in here are familiar with this, but for those who may not be, we added this section in several years ago because as part of the budget process, when Steve was talking about it, the executive team meets with the departments, and at that time, we review their expanded program requests. So things that they need that is above their base budget items. Could be personnel, could be equipment. And so after we have all of our meetings with the departments, the executive team we rank the items and then we average it. And then it is, depending on the funding, is what we've gone over is what has made it into the budget. But there had been discussion in the past that, well, there's still more below the line. It just doesn't stop at what we've shown y'all so far. And so wanting to see the items that have been requested. And Councilmember Hayward had talked to me and just wanted to let everybody know that this presentation, we will email it to you guys. So you will have it. There's a lot of items up here. So you can take the time later to review it. We'll also make sure it's on the website for those that want to access it on there too. So we will get that done. So that being said, let's look and see what did not make the budget this year. This is a new slide that we've added in just to kind of show for the general fund. There was over $8 million requested in expanded program items. We were able to fund $5.14 million. As we've talked about, the majority of those items, probably, I think it's about 75% of that, has gone to the two top priority goals, the compensation and the infrastructure. So the majority of it does include the ECI, the class and comp, the insurance, the $1 million for the street program. But there is still $3 million left of unfunded items. And so when we talk about the items that departments are bringing to us, we have kind of a pyramid, right? So the must do, need to do, nice to do. And all the items that are on this list that I'm about to show y'all are in the either need to do or the must do. So we've gone through that process, and so the items that are requested are still things that are lingering out there. And as you can see, the different funds, we have the EMS and drainage and water, wastewater. Again, the majority of the items that have been funded are the compensation-related items. Okay, so this is just for the general fund. This is page 1 of 2 of the items that did not get funded. Again, we'll send this out if there's any specific questions on any of these items, the personnel or the programs. Feel free to ask. But you can see we have from all departments: police, fleet, parks, streets, library, engineering, facilities. Here's page 2. So this was a total of 31 different items that were requested but did not make the cut. I can go back to, again, as I move on, if y'all want to still review this. But when we look at enterprise funds, so this is the different items for the drainage, EMS, and then the water and sewer fund. Anybody have any questions on any of the items or anything about the cut line? Okay, so then the next thing on here, this was something that we wanted to bring forward for discussion for city holidays. So it's come up Juneteenth is a federal and a state recognized holiday. As currently the city of Schertz does not observe it, a lot of our surrounding cities do observe it. They have added it to their holidays. It's not like they've taken it and replaced it with another. So we are proposing that we add it to our holidays. This is something, if council is agrees to doing this, then we would come back to you all at a council meeting for final approval for it. It does have a cost associated with it, of course. Since it is one of the holidays that what we say a floating holiday, so if it falls on like a Tuesday, we also get the Monday off. If it falls on a Thursday, we get the Friday off. So if it falls on a day where it's just, I guess, a Monday or Wednesday or Friday, the cost would be to the general fund about $35,000. And if it's a 2-day holiday, it would be about $70,000. So looking for feedback from council if this is something like we would like to do. Again, our recommendation would be that we would just add it to our existing holidays. You can see the holidays up there that we currently observe, and not replace it for one of those. But I'd like to hear feedback from council if this is something we'd like to move forward with.
Well, we do have the Christmas Eve, that's not an official federal holiday.
That's correct.
So, and we also do it for other days where we provide that bridge depending on where that holiday falls, like Veterans Day. So in reality, we're looking at about 12, maybe 13 paid holidays right now without adding Juneteenth. We add Juneteenth, we're looking at about 15 in some cases. Personally, Juneteenth, when it was made a holiday, it was a political issue back then. Not that I don't agree with it, but I think it was pushed in with just a 2-day notice. And that's why this city didn't provide the holiday. But council, I just think that if we can't have Juneteenth, we take out the Christmas Eve.
So yes, I'd be happy to hear from other folks. Our recommendation would be that we would not swap it for another holiday. But again, turn it over to you all to see your thoughts.
So, everybody knows where I work. I work in a 24/7 environment. We don't really get the benefit of holidays, just like the first responders. But part of our discussion this year is, the financial compensation for our city employees, and trying to get us up to market. And, part of the consideration on that is if everybody around us is doing it, it doesn't make it right or wrong, but it's a benefit that they provide to their employees in other communities. And if we're really serious about doing as much as we can to get us up to, the midpoint or higher, that this is one of those little benefits that doesn't provide a lot of cost that keeps us on par with the surrounding communities. So yeah, I would support it.
Do other communities provide the Christmas Eve?
I think, yes, there are others.
We did reach out to Seguin, Cibolo, New Braunfels, San Marcos, UC, Converse, everybody around us. As Sarah mentioned, they all added Juneteenth in addition to their existing holiday schedule, with the exception of Cibolo. But they did something because they do offer 2 floating holidays a year, and so that was in conjunction with a floating holiday. Most of our surrounding cities, so we also, whenever we did add Christmas Eve back in 2019, we did benchmark the same group of cities, and most of them had Christmas Eve as a holiday.
Yeah, I agree with Michael. I mean, beyond just straight compensation and dollar bills, there's other quality of life factors for the staff. You also have to look at what is the staff doing on Juneteenth when everybody else is shut down? The bases are shut down, the businesses are shut down. The state is shutting down, it's a holiday. I don't see any reason why not to include it.
No. I'll say, I don't have a problem with adding it because it's a benefit to the city, but I think it's a holiday that was added because it's actually a Texas holiday. To me, I'm not going to go into the political ramifications of where that day should have been. I don't celebrate it. It's not something for me that is something I need to celebrate, but if it makes it better for staff as a marketing tool, then I'll support it that way. Because we don't do a Juneteenth celebration. I don't know how many cities do. And then that still would make it a holiday because then you'd be offering some celebration. Because I don't think a lot of people even know what Juneteenth is. They just go, it's a day off. I mean, when I think about being like in the school district before, as long as it's a day off, it doesn't matter what the holiday is. It's just a day off. And so with that, I'll support it as a marketing tool, but otherwise.
I'd like to go ahead and open it up for a public hearing on this and see what those that have joined us today think about this particular city holiday.
It is a federal holiday.
So what did we do this past year? Police had to work.
So we have
As long as it's a federal holiday, I don't see a problem with that. If it wasn't a federal holiday, then where are we going to stop? And that's just my opinion, because then it's going to be National Pride Day is a holiday, National Old Ladies Day is a holiday.
I think today is National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day, so
yeah, right,
I think that should be a day off.
But if it's a
Celebrate
federal
that.
holiday, it's not fair to our employees not.
We should have brought some, yeah.
Sarah, did you mention the cost?
I did mention the
Yes.
cost, but yes. So if it is one of the days, it's just one day, it would be $35,000. 2 days would be about $70,000.
$70,000 for a two-day holiday. Now, you look at New Year's is a floating holiday. You look at Christmas Day is a floating holiday, but I think do we cover that with Christmas Eve? Or how does that work on
So
that particular day?
Yes, it's one of those that, again,
Could it be a 5-day?
I think it'd be 4 days,
4?
what it ends up being, yes.
Okay.
It depends on if it falls, again, with the Saturday and Sunday of how we recognize our holidays. But yes, as far as floating holidays, it would be New Year's Day, Independence Day, Veterans Day,
Veterans Day.
and then
now
Christmas Eve and
Juneteenth.
Christmas Day. Yes, sir.
And Juneteenth, we're
Yes, sir.
looking at about 16 potential days.
Potentially, yes, depending on how the days fall.
And the minimum cost is $35,000. And
Quit being-
we're looking at about $70,000 for that holiday, if it is. Well,
Independence Day, really, I think it's more of a floating, because Independence Day, everybody's here working. So you're getting it off as another day, right?
Yes, so Independence Day, we do have a lot of our staff that works that day.
They do, to be clear, they don't get a day to replace that.
No, we do not.
no,
So they don't, so we
You
just
get
pay
paid
for it.
overtime.
The offices are closed, we're paying for it, but they're working.
Yes.
So they don't get a day to say it's a float day so they can take it off
They
later?
don't get a day later to take off, no. They just get paid overtime for working that day. The non-exempt employees get paid overtime. The exempt employees do not get paid overtime.
We have a comment in the back. So as the city of Schertz doesn't have a Juneteenth celebration, but I do know other cities around us do have something. But no, we don't. Our plan is not to, we're not talking about doing something that day right now. So I think, again, Juneteenth, we're not intending, this is just simply to add it to one of the observed holidays, not intending to have any event to go along with it. So employees would not be, it would just be another day off. Now, of course, public safety would still be working that day, or if there's, a water main break or something happens for public works, they'll have to be out and respond to that. But no, it's just another day. Now, if employees want to go celebrate at one of the cities that do have something, then of course they're more than welcome to do that.
So, yeah, like Mark said, though, everybody around us is going to be closed, the state, the feds, everybody that we need to interact with for all kinds of reasons. So it doesn't make sense to not be able to provide this as a benefit for our employees.
I think take the day. Add it to the schedule, and it'll be a bonus as a marketing tool.
What I like to see before we make that final decision is all the cities around us that have this holiday, all the cities around us that also have a floating holiday, and the bridge that's provided so that we can actually see where they're at. Because, no, I don't think, not the floating.
So I can tell you right now, and maybe Jessica can come up here for the floating holidays, but the ones that added Juneteenth is Converse, Universal City, Selma, Seguin, New Braunfels, and San Marcos. Cibolo did add it, but they removed, or they replaced it with one of their floating holidays, I think, but.
So Mayor, just to clarify, do you mean by floating holiday, do you mean by if it's on a Thursday adding
Yes.
a Friday, or do you mean floating holiday in the sense that if you have to work on that day, you get to take another day off somewhere in the year?
No,
Are you talking about the prior?
I'm talking about the prior
Okay.
day, yes. If it's on a Tuesday, we're giving Monday off. If it's on a Thursday, we're giving Friday off. You're giving me the ones that do provide Juneteenth, but you haven't given me a combination of who's doing both, because that's what we're proposing here. We're doing both. Our other cities doing both.
So I'll tell you that when I talk about floating holiday with Cibolo in particular, it's not the Monday or the Tuesday, Thursday thing off that's in conjunction with another holiday. It's that they bank hours, the employee banks hours to be used at any time. That's how they are defining floating holiday.
See, and we're not defining it that way. Am I correct?
Correct.
See, so you're telling me Cibolo's doing this, but in reality, they're taking something away.
Yeah.
So they did, they added Juneteenth and they removed Columbus Day and added 2 floating holidays.
And that's why I need to see both, because right now you're saying all these cities are doing this, this, and this, but you're not giving me a listing of all the cities that are doing this and this, which is what we are proposing here.
Yeah, I don't care about Cibolo. I don't care about New Braunfels. I'm not here to represent their staff, their employees, their residents. What I see up on the screen up there is every one of those events, with the exception of Christmas Eve, is a federal holiday, correct? As far as I'm concerned, for the city of Schertz, and my viewpoint is, I don't care about the other cities.
But you did.
Hold on a minute. I didn't interrupt you. I don't care about the other cities. I care about the city of Schertz. And as far as I'm concerned, we can set the standard. As far as I'm concerned, my input is the city of Schertz, for our employees, should mirror the federal observed holidays, and we're going to raise the bar by offering our employees Christmas Eve as well. To me, it's that simple. It doesn't matter what Cibolo is doing. It doesn't matter what Seguin's doing or New Braunfels.
And I understand what you're saying, but you really did say you did care when you said, what are other cities doing?
I didn't ask that question.
Well, technically you did when you said, this city's closed, this city's closed. So I'm just trying to get a better perspective.
It's not about what the other cities are doing. It's about a function of the work environment. The reality of it is those are federal holidays. Banks are closed typically. The bases are closed. Everything is shut down. It's a federal holiday.
I agree with, honestly, I agree with Allison as far as like the purpose of the holiday, but I don't celebrate Columbus Day. I'm not out there on a boat or whatever. I think if we're looking at the whole idea of where we're trying to get to with the mentality, with our staff, with our, and trying to be competitive in the market, I think Michael made a great point that that's where we need to be, and we need to create that environment that we're here to take care of you. And yeah, a lot of these other holidays, they're working, so maybe this is like the one holiday that they could take a break and actually enjoy it as like what most people do on holidays is not think about the actual holiday, just be able to take a day off. So I'm fine with it, and I don't need to micromanage and know exactly all the other deals that other cities are doing. It does seem, in general, if that's the trend, then we need to actually put our money where our mouth is and say, if we're going to take care of the staff, and that's our focus, especially with this budget year, we should go ahead and add it and not be the outlier, who's making a stand or something.
Well, I'm getting consensus that we're adding it. The next question then would be
Yes.
the floating.
It can be floating.
Well,
And floating means that if it's on a Thursday, you get Friday off. If it's on a Tuesday, you get Monday off.
Yes.
Okay.
I would term it as like an adjacent extra day rather than floating, because a floating holiday is one that you can use at any time. So let's be clear that it's not a floating holiday.
It's adjacent.
It's an adjacent day off.
So we used floating just because the date moves for the day of the week, right?
Right.
But you're right. Floating holiday is a day that can be banked and used at a later time. We're talking about the Monday the Monday and the Thursday.
The actual
thing,
day
or
is the
Tuesday and
floating
Thursday.
day because we don't know when it hits on that
Right.
particular day.
Right.
Okay,
So if we want to be the premier city and have other people looking to us, we got to act like it and do the right thing.
Thank you for the feedback. So we will be bringing it forward to council because I think it requires approval of the policy handbook to adjust that. And I can't speak for all staff, but I do know that I appreciate the what we have here as far as doing the adjacent holiday. So I know I do appreciate that. But so I guess we will be bringing forward this to y'all for approval. Thank you. And now the fun part, James, or Steve, sorry.
Okay, so we are going to shift gears here and take a little direction change by having an action item. And because we were going to do this at the end, we moved it up so we could make sure that we get to this and everybody has an opportunity. So you do have an action item that is proposing, actually the first part is we're presenting to you the no new revenue rate and the voter approval rate. You can see those listed. James went over those earlier. Those are calculated by our tax assessor collector, and we are required to bring those forward to you for adoption or presentation rather. And then your proposed tax rate, what you'd be setting is the max tax rate. So we are also proposing that as the tax rate. Just as a reminder, it equals the voter approval rate. We are reducing the tax rate itself by about 3/4 of a penny from the current rate. So At this point, we would ask for a motion to approve that.
Okay. Is there specific language that needs to be read on this one, Ms. Edmondson?
No, sir.
Okay.
And there's no specific language for adoption on this.
So there's no specific language for this one then?
Yes, sir.
So it's just a,
Just read the item caption,
the caption of.
and if there's discussion,
Okay.
then a motion.
No, so there is a resolution number 23R75, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, accepting a state-defined tax rate and setting the preliminary 2023 tax rate. There's a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we set the proposed tax rate at .4872.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Dalla and second by Councilmember Hayward. Any other discussion? Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
We have 6 ayes, no objection. Motion passes.
Thank you. Now we will shift gears back and go to the CIP updates, and CIP and project updates. I think we're going to start with water and wastewater. As Larry makes his way up here, I'll see if I can conjure up another joke. Better than the rainbow joke? All right. I'll get one from Parks next time instead of engineering. No, I'm just kidding.
Hello, my name is Jared Mohite, Public Works Superintendent. Got to go over the completed projects. We have the Crest Oak sewer line that is, the Crest Oak sewer line that was in construction. It has been completed. Also, we have the Northcliffe NACO generator design, which is about $40,000 for the design. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. We have the Aviation Heights water line replacement, $1.8 million. I'm really nervous. Also, the Fred Couples line, Schwab water line, which is roughly around 50. Sorry, I'm nervous. I don't really speak a lot up here, but you can. And then we have the Homestead main phase 2 line, and sorry, just nervous.
You did fine.
All right, yeah, those are the ones we completed this year. Moving forward, also in progress this year, we have the Northcliffe and NACO generator. So this is the construction portion, approved at $596,000. We do have the generators on site, which is one of the hardest things to get right now. So we're working on finalizing that, hopefully fairly soon, but it's in progress right now. The Corbett ground storage, paid for out of impact fees, and also we received a grant for this project. Anticipated it being about $7.5 million, and we're just beginning that construction process now. SCADA upgrades, this is an ongoing project, $189,000. We anticipate being done with these phases of the project close to the end of this fiscal year. That will be a long, ongoing process. We've got a lot of work to do on the SCADA system. So FM 2252 utility relocations, that $295,000 was design, and $275,000 for construction. Mostly complete with this project, but it's going to be ongoing for a while because we have adjustments we have to make as the road work progresses. So East Live Oak I-35 24-inch wire transmission line. We heard a lot about this. So the engineering portion is still in progress at $1.2 million. And then that project will be slowly progressing forward. That's a big project, so you'll hear about that a lot. Woman Hollering Creek wastewater, currently still projecting $12 million. We've made a lot of progress on that. Again, that's a big project. So right now, if you're driving down 1518, you see that 30-inch line going really deep, pretty close to the road. So that's a big project for us. Greytown Ware Scheme loop lines, pretty well done with the design, construction, and we anticipate at $4.4 million. And we haven't broken ground yet, but it is the project is ongoing. Riata lift station relocation. This is a reimbursable project with the I-35 NEX, so anticipate $2.4 million, but again, it gets reimbursed as we spend those dollars because it's an interstate project. FM 1518 utility relocations, we're looking at a total of about $14.7 million. This is going to be some joint bid and non-joint bid work, so we got some work to do ahead of time. And then as they get started on the road, there will be some water line work that happens with that as well. 23-24 planned projects. Again, the 24-inch transmission line. We're going to start doing easement acquisition, hopefully going forward, and that's about $1 million. Cibolo West wastewater trunk line route study. So this is a joint project with our agreement with Green Valley SUD, and our portion is going to be about $205,000, and they'll be partnering on that as well. I-35 NEX utility relocations. Again, this is a fully reimbursable project, mostly water line, about $2.8 million. And as that project progresses, that work will happen. A lot of that's joint bid, except the lift station I mentioned earlier. Greenshire water line. Anticipate that being a $3.3 million project, and so a few roads there in the Greenshire area, and then Northcliffe Country Club Estates water main. That's also a $3.2 million anticipated cost, and we're working on that ahead of the road improvements coming up, hopefully.
I'm Kevin Anderson, Drainage Superintendent. I'll go over the completed is the FM 78 drainage channel. The design phase is done. We've completed that. We're going to start the construction phase in 23-24. It's going to consist of some silt removal, reshaping of the ditch, some tree removal, and a little bit of concrete work down where the drainage channel meets Cibolo Creek. That should start next year, and hopefully it will go very well.
Yeah, and the other project on the list there, the Riata detention. So that's also being reconfigured as part of the I-35 NEX project because the right-of-way they're picking up, so approximately $1 million, but also reimbursable. 5 NEX project. Our new internal services director, Donish.
Good morning. May I tell a joke? Okay. Why didn't the bell pepper practice archery?
Why not?
Because he didn't habanero.
Ah.
Thank you. Alrighty, good morning, everyone. So for facilities, this current fiscal year, we completed the HVAC replacement at the library server room. That was $49,000. We also completed the parks remodel design phase, which was $75,850. We also completed the Kramer House deck remodel, which was $8,500. Currently in process, we have the Civic Center installation improvement, which is $25,000. Kramer House landscaping and stone walkway to kind of wrap up the Kramer House project is going to be $4,000. And then the library sound mitigation, that project is $15,000. Next fiscal year, we plan on the City Hall countertop remodel, estimating at $138,000. The Police Department HVAC replacement, $150,000. Parks remodel, building construction, $750,000. And then the City Hall HVAC replacement, $250,000. And then Fire Station 4 construction, about $12 million. Yes, sir. I believe that project was canceled. Oh, no, don't speak.
Not quite. That's close. We're hoping it's canceled. So the issue you may recall with the old Borg field is the idea at the time was we would move some of PD folks for space needs into the old Borgfeld facility. I think a couple things happened. One is I think the project may have been bigger and not sure we would have necessarily been entirely enthusiastic about the results. And then additionally, and this is really the thing, is we have an opportunity with Guadalupe County, their facility off 78 that they went into, the old Riedel's department store. There is extra space there. They have indicated a willingness to have us in there. We would just have to pay for the work needs to be done to get in. And so we are working with Guadalupe County to get agreement on that. Once we reach agreement with them, and we know that's where the PD folks are going, that officially will cancel the Borgfeld project. And then likely what we'll do is shortly thereafter come to council with a proposal of what to do with Borgfeld. What we had talked about before is just demoing the building. It's not in very good shape. We think that, you know, the idea is that we sell the property, but the concern is to sell it with that building on it. We kind of leave what is likely to become, again, quickly an eyesore. And so the idea is just scrape it. That way, whoever were to buy it, if that's the route we go, if they don't do anything with it right away, it doesn't look bad, doesn't create problems for anybody going forward. So not quite dead, but that's what the wait is to get agreement on that sharing a facility with the county.
Any other questions?
Good morning. Why are chickens so musical? They always have a drumstick.
Hey, where do you think I got the first joke?
I'm here to talk about streets. This year has been a pretty busy year overall for streets. What we've completed in this fiscal year, we did the fog seal. We completed that. That was the fog seal we applied over the chip sealed areas that we did earlier to address some of the residents' concerns with the chip seal product. The El Bell Storm Drain and Overlay Project, which included the new traffic signal at Westchester and El Bell. We also have completed the Tri-County Parkway project, and that project not only included reconstructing Tri-County, but it also included a block worth of Lookout and sewer replacement in part of Tri-County in that block of Lookout Road. Updated our PCI data. We've got new inspection data, so we've got new PCI scores for all of our streets. We also completed our slurry seal program or resurfacing program where we did slurry seal in a wide variety of neighborhoods throughout the city. We have some projects that are currently in progress. One of them is the Lookout Road reconstruction project. That's kind of an extension or addition to the Tri-County Parkway project. We'll be reconstructing the remainder of Lookout Road all the way down to Schertz Parkway, signalizing the intersection at Schertz Parkway and Lookout Road, as well as replacing the sewer line in that section. And EDC is funding that project, much like they funded the Tri-County Parkway project. We're also actively working on the Main Street project. That's a big one. There's a lot of moving pieces with that, with utility replacements, but we're making progress on that. We hope to get to construction on some of those elements in the not too distant future.
That's not all. We have some more projects planned for this year that we expect to be complete by the end of this fiscal year. There are 3 projects. These are 3 new span projects. First project is to make some repairs to Trainer Hale. Parts of that roadway are in very poor shape, potholes on top of potholes, including a full width section near 1518. So we're going to take care of those. We're going to remove those, patch those areas to make the road more serviceable. We'll also be doing some slurry seal work or resurfacing work. If some of you may recall that as we went through last year's project, we had to trim some of the streets out of what we intended to do in order to stay within budget. So we're going to finish the streets in Ashley Place that we weren't able to finish with the previous project, and we're doing another street, Beck Street, which is off of Schertz Parkway, just north of the railroad tracks. And the last project that we're going to do is Windy Meadows. We're going to do a mill and overlay on that, similar to what we did on the southern part of Schertz Parkway a couple years ago. All 3 of those projects have been bid, and I expect to bring all 3 of them to you on council on the 15th for contract awards, and then we would likely see construction happening as early as late at the end of this month, but starting in September. Now, all 3 of them will go pretty quickly. There's not a whole lot of time involved in all of the work with these projects, so we're confident we can get them done in this fiscal year. What do we have planned next? With the additional funding that James outlined earlier, plus some other funding sources that he was able to find, leftover street bond money, leftover funding that council had previously allocated for streets, kind of shook the cushions from the couch, got all the spare change we could to put together a list of projects that we can do. Now we have some different categories of projects here. When we talk about resurfacing, that is a street that's in relatively good shape where we're doing more pavement preservation effort on. We're doing a slurry seal or we're doing an overlay on it. What we call rehabilitation is similar to what we did a few years ago up in the North Cliff area, where we're basically doing more than just the resurfacing. The street is deteriorated to a point where you can't just resurface it, but we don't have to fully reconstruct it. So it's kind of in between. But it's significantly more expensive to do what we're calling rehabilitation than it is just the resurfacing. Resurfacing costs for a slurry seal about $7 a square yard. The rehabilitation is about $35 a square yard, and then reconstruction is even higher than that per square yard. So with these projects, we have some resurfacing plan, the northern piece of Schertz Parkway to get us all the way up to I-35, and then another comprehensive project that would be various subdivisions in the city and a couple of individual streets. And for rehabilitation, some of these streets that are in the rehabilitation program are, again, streets that we had to pull out early from last year's project because they deteriorated so far they couldn't be in the slurry seal contract. They needed more work. So we're trying to get caught back up with what we intended to do with that earlier project. Now, one of the other things that's kind of a little bit of a departure from what we've done in the past is we're able to put in some what I call front-end work for Lower Seguin Road. Lower Seguin Road really needs a big comprehensive reconstruction project. It's a master thoroughfare plan route, needs widening, needs other drainage improvements, all of that. It's an expensive project. But we have an advocate to help pay for construction of that with the base. There's DOD funding that we can chase after to help pay for construction. In order to go after that funding, it's federal funding, so we have to follow the federal procurement process. The first step of that is do what's called environmental clearance, which also encompasses preliminary design for the project. We're able to fit that within the funding we have available to get that work done, that then we can get to construction sooner on that. That's it for me, unless you all have any questions.
Will you hit your mic?
So Old Wiederstein Road has been a topic for years, and just where is that on our CIP list?
It is on our CIP list, but it's more of a master thoroughfare plan route. It's not part of the what we call the SPAM effort. What we're doing here right now with this, we'll have more information on that when we do the actual formal comprehensive CIP presentation. There's a whole list of roadways that are in there.
It's on the list. This is representative of what we're doing now and what's coming up next year. We actually have a 5-year CIP where we've scheduled out the work. It's prioritized according to the PCI, right? So we're hitting them as in terms of need. Also, what you're seeing here, to be clear, is kind of a combination of operating expense and likely debt expense. So this is a little bit of a blend in terms of projects. Some things that are in the operating budget and some things that'll end up on the CIP. Fair enough, John?
Yes.
Okay.
Joke. Go back to grade school. Why didn't the skeleton cross the road? Didn't have any guts. All right. So let's get the exciting part started. Parks. We did a lot of work up at a Windy Swan Memorial Park. A lot of work. Basketball courts, the splash pad, swing sets with the shade over the top. Irrigation, a complete remodel of the irrigation system. It was a 30-something-year-old irrigation system, so we went through and fixed all that. The best part for me was the trees. We planted 33 good-sized trees, so in the next 5 years, there's going to be shade everywhere around that park. Picnic tables, we've got a few of them in, a couple of more coming in, barbecue pits for the pavilion, and also under by the actual eave of the restroom, there's going to be a barbecue pit out there. Restroom renovation, we're still in progress with that. I think the last piece we're waiting on there is the partitions for the restroom. Took us quite a while to get in. With some supply chain stuff on that, but we're within target to get that done in the next 3 weeks, so that will be completed. Cibolo Valley Drive medians. I don't know if you've seen them. Sometimes I drive past there, but we did some work out there, the irrigation. It's all drip. It's a really full system. Really looks good for that side of town. New Christmas tree. It looks expensive, but this is like almost a 40-foot tall tree, and this is the one that we put in front of the campus every year. So the old one was getting structurally not stable, so we needed to replace that. Playground safety surfacing, we do this every year. We go in and make sure that it is at the level which is required for us, and we did that this year. Cypress Point. We did a tree planting up there around the playscape up there, and really nice looking trees. We also even put cypress trees up there, kind of to make sense. So there's a few of those up there, and that turned out really well if you get a chance to look at that. Crescent Bend Nature Park, we finally got the automatic gate in there. So it is solar powered, it's automatic. We are just waiting to go live with it because it's going to take a while for people to understand that they can't go in there after certain times. So they don't get trapped in there. All right. So Cypress Point, we're also doing a shade structure over the playscape area and also another swing set with the shade integrated up there. It is a very hot park. That's why we did the trees. We want some place for the kids to go where they're not just going to, melt up there. Skate park light has been challenging, very challenging for me. Probably the most challenging thing on this list. But we finally got to a point where in the next week, I should be getting the parts in, and we should be getting that installed very soon. So Heritage Oaks Park, the bridge, pedestrian bridge kind of on the back side of the park to kind of tie that neighborhood into Heritage Oaks Park. They've started with the footings on that. I'm thinking they're going to be constructing that in the next couple weeks. And then we'll be adding a path to our playground to kind of tie that all in together. Senior Center Garden Edition. We got the design done on that. We should be going out to bid on that pretty soon, I think next week or next couple weeks. And that's really kind of that back area where we have all the garden planters and all that, just to kind of give them a little more outdoor space to kind of use. Schertz Soccer Complex, irrigation, storage. We had some old storage tanks out there that are just not viable anymore, so we have come up with a plan and engineered it to where we can kind of upgrade that so that we're not losing any turf or any kind of issues out there. Great Northern Trail, Riata segment. Lauren's been working on getting that done. I think that it's kind of going through. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but she's been working on that one. So, Crescent Bend Nature Park Master Plan, so needed. We need to have, hey, what's this going to look like? Where are we going to go? Let's go in the same direction and not just put pieces out there. So this is going to be a really big thing for Crescent Bend, because it has turned since COVID to be one of our most popular parks. It is the most traveled park we have, because it's offering something that you can't get anywhere else kind of in this area. So, and then Dietz Creek Trail. That's another project that Lauren's been working on. That's going to be going from basically Schertz Parkway and kind of go through all the way around to, what's that other road called? Askey, I think it is, and then goes all the way down farther there. So. Hope if I push the right button. All right, Thilmeyer Park renovations. So Thilmeyer Park's an interesting park. It's very well used, but it does need some renovations. We've got a whole design for the parking lot to kind of go over that, rocky parking lot that we have, pave it, kind of have a road going around with some parking around the backside by that batting cage area. It's a really kind of going to be a good design. We'll be upgrading any of the issues we have with some code, compliance stuff and the restrooms and ADA and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of, we're working on that. Permanent LED lights for holiday decorations. Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever seen them on the buildings, but they're under the eaves and they're permanent. And it just gives us so much more options to where we're not having to store them. They stay up all year. When they're not on, you don't even know they're there. But when they're on, you can do a lot of cool things. So that's really exciting. And then holiday trail of lights. We've been talking about this for years. It's something we need to do. So this is something that I'm excited about because I love holiday lights. But so that's kind of going to be the theme of what we'll be doing. Get that plan together by December, or actually get it in by December.
So the permanent LED lights, are those the ones that a lot of people are now putting on their homes and they change colors and all sorts of, okay.
Yeah, and you could even sync them to music. I mean, there's a lot of options with them where you could even put it for like 4th of July, you could put red, white, and blue. I mean, yeah.
On the holiday trail of lights, what trail are we looking at?
From my understanding on the Trail of Lights, it's going to be, I believe it was, is that the one in Pickerel?
Pickerel Park, yes.
Pickerel Park, yeah. And it kind of goes around that backside by VVYA, and it's kind of a bigger trail out there, yeah.
On the Riata segment of the Northern Trail, is that going to incorporate the trails there that the HOA owns, or how's that going to work going through there?
I believe Lauren's been talking with the HOA out there. She just had a meeting about last week about it, and they were really excited to kind of partner with us, and they were like, hey, let's put it in now. And she's like, well, let's design it so we can make sure it works for everybody. So that's, yeah, it's going to incorporate that, yeah.
So then we would take ownership of that land from the HOA, or just do an agreement with them?
Yeah, probably, yeah, just an easement.
Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't own the land. We'd probably get an easement to make sure it's open to the public because we're putting money into it, but we'd let them keep the property.
Okay.
Just one other thing, what's the feasibility of the pet park, the doggy park, having the light? Yeah.
Dog park where?
At the dog park, I've seen 30 to 40 people, and once it's dark, they all have to leave. Sometimes trying to find the dog is a challenge for them.
And to squash the rumors, Coco did not get lost out there. Coco is okay.
Well-
I think that project is still under discussion. As far as how large or how small
Right,
it would
yes.
be. I think Parks has a plan that they would like to push forward.
So, yes, my understanding with the dog park is that at the place it's at right now, it's a complete rebuild for it. But again, if it's just the lighting portion, I mean, that could be something that we could explore. I know part of it was the incorporating it into the community circle kind of plan that we have for that area, which I think Lauren's going to be going to the EDC board in September to talk about maybe utilizing some funds for that. So it would be more part of the bigger design of that idea.
All right, thank you.
Jared's going to drop the mic. Okay, so now we're at the portion of the presentation where we can discuss anything we've gone over. If you want to go back to some items, we can do that as well. If we want to take some comments from
Definite.
the
Yeah,
citizens.
Let's find out from
Citizens to be heard or?
the
residents.
citizens to be heard. If there's any discussion.
Accomplished.
Do you mind repeating? So
The Cibolo Creek, you had I don't know which gentleman it was, that said that the removal of trees or cleanup of Cibolo Creek had been put on the back burner, basically.
under parks? Or was that Public Works?
Drainage.
I believe that's,
I think it might have been James. Was it when James was talking?
So I think it was below the cut line on the budget. So that was an expanded
Yes, the
program.
cut line. I'm sorry. I'm
That
not
was an
using the
expanded
cut-
program request we put in this year. That was it's called Cibolo Creek tree removal. We can't just take out all the trees in the creek, right? But we can thin out the invasive species just to help with flow and to open it up so it's not backing up any worse. And so it was an expanded program item. We've done some work in-house. That was just a one-time shot, try to get a good bit done at one time. And it fell below the cut line. So it's not that we're not going to be doing any work down there. It's just we won't be able to just take a big jump into it. So this first part was going to be on 78, adjacent to Palm Park. We own the property down there off 78 downstream. And that was where we were going to start. But we've also done some work in just general areas, smaller work. But again, that was just a one-time project to try to get a big jump on that area.
When you say downstream, to me that means we're 15, 18 downstream.
Right. Yeah.
Going
Towards I-10.
south.
Yes.
Towards I-10.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Okay. Council, any projects that were not mentioned that you may want to consider? If not, also bring up for their attention for next year also. This is a perfect opportunity to start planning for 2024, 2025.
I'll just say that I think everything has been addressed that I was concerned about. Things like Lower Seguin Road. You know, I know it's not going to be done in 23, 24 budget, but at least the plan is there to continue moving on, and you're addressing it. There were a couple other items like that they're in the plan, so I'm glad to hear that. And of course, you know, the cut line, it's never good to see what's below the cut line because there's a few things there that I think should be above, but you know, I also understand where our budget priorities this year, filling our folks, getting the class and comp done. I think that's more important than anything at this point, taking care of the folks, the people.
and I will say in regards to the CIP, we are putting together that multi-year plan. And we're not quite there yet, but we will bring it back to you and present to you and kind of show you that plan of work that we're working on and how we can afford to do it. So, and hopefully it'll address some of those items that y'all consider priority items, and also a way to get there, so.
No, and I think Mayor Pro Tem Brown was correct. Our main focus was compensation.
Yes, sir.
This year, and that was the focus, and we're addressing it. Council, any other comments? Councilmember Dahl?
I think overall we've got a good budget framework. I like what we're doing with our budget. 3 out of the 4 years that I've been here, we've been able to decrease the tax rate. Obviously, we can't control the appraisals, but I think people would rather have their appraisals go up than go down. But overall, I think we're headed in a good place, and thanks everybody for all the work.
I do want to say, kudos to James and his crew and all the staff for putting this together. It's a lot of work, and I've asked a lot of them, especially the finance staff, to bring us some deliverables that I think in the future everybody's going to see the benefit of. So they've done a really good job putting this budget together, as well as doing those other things that you'll see shortly, and they've done a fantastic job of that. So great job, James and staff. So.
There's one thing that we talked about, Steve, that I didn't see on there, the grant writer, to leverage our funds with grants. What are your perspective on that?
So the approach that we're taking is, that's another thing that we've tasked Linda Klepper and tasked her with. We intend to utilize an outside consulting firm for that, where essentially we won't pay until we receive. And that's a very oversimplified way of putting it, but it is a scenario where we won't pay until we receive the actual grants themselves.
So it's not a position. It's just we get awarded $1 million. We provide a portion of, but in reality, we actually leverage more funds than we would ever have had.
Yes, sir. We've been working, or would like to work, with a company called GrantWorks. I don't want to say it's contingency-based, because it's not contingency-based technically, but they bring us the opportunity, we pursue the opportunity, they narrow them down to the ones that we can qualify for. We pursue those opportunities, and then we do an RFP at that point to select somebody to help us administer the grant. There's a portion of that grant typically that you may allocate to that administration. We utilize that to utilize them to administer the grant for us. So they do a lot of that homework. There's no payment involved for that homework. So.
Great.
And I would like to point out when Park's presentation, they had a couple of projects that were grant funded, some quite large, like the Dietz Creek had 80% out of their 1.25 million was grants. The Cypress Point Shade structure, 57,000 out of the 9,000 was grants. And then if you'll look at, or if you go back to some of the streets or water and sewer funding, I see a lot of the $10 million we got from ARP, all federal funding, all paying for 1518 generators and some other stuff. So we're still leveraging all that. And we do have to spend that money. So we got $10 million, but if we don't spend it by 2026, we have to turn around and give it back. There's actually been some talk up there that people aren't spending it fast enough, and they'll be looking potentially to try to take some back quicker. But right now I don't think that's a reality. And we have plenty of projects that are coming, as you saw on the water and sewer, to use up that $10 million. Like the Crest Oak project was all ARP funding as well, so that was all non-city money that we were able to accomplish that. And then we have the small operational grants. While we don't talk about here, they are kind of built into our budget. PD's gone out and got a lot of equipment, small type equipment grants. Fire gets a grant every now and then for hazmat equipment that we actually just wrapped up a hazmat equipment grant, about $36,000. But those are small operational, and so sometimes they don't make it up to this kind of discussion.
Thank you.
We do a good job now, and to your point, Mayor, we're going to continue to do that. We're going to see if we can get more, we'll get more. Yes, sir. it's a priority.
Glad y'all are going with Grant Works. I've spoken to someone from their company. They seem to be a really reputable and good company at making sure you're not just applying for grants and throwing something out there and hoping something comes back. They kind of get you narrowed down. The other thing I wanted to say is I'm glad that Parks and Recs dealt with Cypress Park, because when you go out there was nothing, and parents were having a hard time getting their kids out there on that equipment. So I'm glad that they actually have taken part in taking care of that and upgrading it so that it'll be more comfortable for the parents and the kids in the future. And for the most part, I think we're going in the right direction. Oh, and I didn't see my sleigh on there.
What's that?
There's a story.
Oh, okay.
But
Council, any other comments, concerns?
Bless you. Well, if you do think of more things, feel free to reach out to me or the staff, and we'll take it into consideration. We will be bringing this back. The schedule that you saw, the next couple of meetings, you'll see the budget stuff. We'll get rolling and get this implemented. So.
Oh, thank you for putting this together. Thanks for all the staff.
Before we do, Mayor, I do have a joke.
Oh, you do?
I do have a joke.
Well,
if you'd like me to read
let
it.
me finish the thank yous first.
Okay,
I might just
all
have
right.
to walk
I just didn't
out
want
on
everybody
that
to
joke.
leave.
No, seriously, thank you all for putting this budget together, providing for our citizens and our community also. It is very important that we work together and address some of the issues. I know Lower Seguin has been one of those issues, and with Congressman Cuellar's assistance, we will get that road taken care of too. But it's a testament to what you provide for our residents. And I just want to say my deepest gratitude. Thank you. All right, now we're ready for your joke.
Okay. And this one is somewhat for Councilman Scagliola, because he loves bureaucrats so much. So how many bureaucrats does it take to change a light bulb? 1 to issue a requisition form LB 24, 1 to sign the work order DF 69, 3 to consult with management and reject both forms as not applicable to maintenance as per regulations, 17 to form a fact-finding committee to discuss the overuse of LB 24. After 10 months of debate, there will be an inquiry into the findings of this committee, and 21 members will discuss the ramifications of the darkened room. After a further year, the Undersecretary of Public Works will call a press conference to announce the increased budget spending to increase efficiency of the department. Is that bureaucratic enough? No, I just want to say thank you to the council and the staff, and thank you, Mayor. We don't have anything further, but we do have lunch that's here.
With that, let's go ahead and close it out. And it's 11:03. Our budget retreat is closed, and please join us for some refreshments, light refreshments. Thank you, Steve. Thanks again.